Joker, Folie Deux. Released October 4th, 2024. Directed by Todd Phillips. Written by Scott Silver, Todd Phillips, and Bob Kane. Starring Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga, and Brendan Gleeson. MPA age rating, R. Rotten Tomatoes score, 39%. Metacritic, 48. IMDb, 5.5. Welcome back to Real Reviews. Like always, I am your host, Lee. Today we are talking about Joker, Folie Deux, the sequel to the 2019 film. I will lead with my biases. I hated the first movie. I acknowledge that it did some things really well, and that Joaquin Phoenix was a great actor, but I hated the movie all the same. But let's talk about this movie. This movie starts in Arkham a few years after Arthur was arrested for the events of the first movie. If you don't recall, the first movie was basically about what happens to someone when the system fails and abandons them and they have no support system. This one is largely about how corrupt systems fail those in need, mainly pointing the finger at lawyers who try to infantilize their clients in an attempt to win a case, and prison staff who become bullies due to the power imbalance. Harley Quinn represents how people get obsessed with criminals and think they know them based on new articles and docudramas about them. Honestly, let's talk about Harley for a minute. First, Lady Gaga does a fine job, no issues there. But I remember that Todd Phillips said that he was basically stripping away a lot of the things that made her who she was in an attempt to make a new character. This version of Harley is, in my opinion, leagues worse than almost any interpretation I can think of. She is shallow, manipulative, and doesn't actually care about Arthur in the least bit. Maybe the worst part is they talk about how she went to school to be a psychologist. They could have added her into the story in a more meaningful way closer to the comics or the original animated series, but instead go for the obsessed fangirl. On to the other actors. Joaquin puts in another great performance. He does a good job bouncing between different levels of sanity. Phoenix and Gaga do a great job playing off of one another. Brendan Gleeson is the only other constant character, and he seems to be the main guard at Arkham. He also does a great job. Fantastic facial expressions. The story for the movie is a bit of a mess, but that is because it jumps back and forth between delusion and reality pretty frequently. Heck, by the end, I wasn't even sure if the reality we saw wasn't just another delusion. It makes everything hard to really rate when it comes to the story. I didn't hate it though. Honestly, the story of Arthur falling in love and going to trial was done pretty well. It does a good job showing how people rally around him and how he still has a grip on the communities of Gotham. There are some things that push this story more into the whole thing is a delusion, though. There is a scene where Harley starts a fire in a piano in Arkham, which looks to be an older tile and concrete building, but the whole first floor goes up in flames, and then the next time we see it, everything is fine. Guards just don't seem to exist or are easy to avoid in certain scenes. Heck, them singing and dancing adds to it as well. One thing that this movie does just as well as the first is cinematography. Scenes are shot so well. The lighting is so good. Heck, even the way the camera pans around the scenes is done really well. And honestly, that deserves some credit because it is hard enough to do well that every movie can't get it right. There aren't really very many effects to judge in the movie. The few that are done are also done very well. It is paced pretty oddly. They have several very long drawn-out scenes that by the end didn't feel like they added anything to the movie worth mentioning. Also, at over 2 hours long, it certainly could have had around 10 or more minutes cut, and it wouldn't have changed the overall narrative. I have a weird take on this movie. I find it overall more enjoyable, but also recognize that it is a worse movie than the first. Ultimately, I recommend waiting until it is streaming to watch it, especially if you are paying full price for the movie tickets. I gave it a 5 out of 8 or a 6.25 stars out of 10. Like always, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I typically have at least 2 videos out per week, real reviews like this or AI reviews depending on releases. Until next time.